I'm Art Fennell, and welcome to a special edition of The Report. You may not be aware of this, but today marks an infamous date in American history. It was February 21st, 43 years ago, that Malcolm X, the fiery and charismatic former Speaker for the Nation of Islam, was assassinated in Harlem, New York. But who really killed Malcolm X? That's the question we probe today as we turn back the page to the turbulent 1960s and re-examine what we thought we knew about Malcolm's murder. But as we investigate further, we may have it all wrong. Here's our in-depth AFR special report. Who killed Malcolm X? It was an incredible time of revelation and turmoil in the United States. From the late 1950s to the 1960s, America was facing an uncertain future. Tensions were high. The country was at war in Vietnam. By 1960, a young new president entered the White House, delivering words of change and inspiration.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
The U.S. crossed another milestone when a brave astronaut achieved the impossible by orbiting the Earth.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
While fighting a war abroad, the country was being torn apart by a war of race relations at home. The civil rights movement was awakening the nation.
White girls and sisters and brothers, I have a dream today.
But while King was rising from the South, another man was rising from the North, from the streets and mosques of Harlem.
The most active person in the spreading of the black Muslim movement is Elijah Muhammad's second in command, who calls himself Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, a.k.a. Malcolm Little, was young, dynamic, and angry. His early years had been spent as a street hustler. Undisciplined and mostly in trouble, he spent time in prison, where he eventually picked up the Quran, cleaned himself up, and humbled himself to the teachings of Muslim leader Elijah Muhammad.
The white people in this country are guilty today and must accept the blame for the collective criminal act that was committed against black people by bringing our people to this country.
Malcolm X would quickly become the messenger of the Muslims.
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us.
When he spoke, people listened. They gathered at town halls, mosques, and even street corners.
Please, your women can't walk the street without some cracker putting his hands on her, then you're not supposed to be in motion.
The fiery rhetoric of Malcolm X struck a chord with blacks inside the Muslim faith and to those outside as well, because while Martin King was leading a peaceful movement preaching nonviolence, Malcolm X was proclaiming equality by any means necessary.
Democracy is hypocrisy. If democracy means freedom, why aren't our people free? If democracy means justice, why don't we have justice? If democracy means equality, why don't we have equality?
Malcolm X was not only critical of U.S. democracy, but also critical of the politicians elected to uphold it, especially President John F. Kennedy.
He has the time to take a stand against U.S. Steel, against Castro, against Khrushchev, against Laos and South Vietnam and all these other places all over the world. But when it comes to time to correcting the injustices that are being inflicted against Negroes in this country, Kennedy sits up there like Nero. He's fiddling while Birmingham is burning.
Not long after those remarks, President Kennedy was assassinated. And when asked about the murder, Malcolm X made a statement that many believe was the beginning of his own demise. He said it was like the chickens coming home to roost, which prompted an immediate reprimand from the Nation of Islam.
This statement is from Messenger Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Muslims in America. Minister Malcolm Shabazz addressing a public meeting at Manhattan Center in New York City on Sunday, December the 1st, did not speak for the Muslims when he made comments on the death of the President, John F. Kennedy. He was speaking for himself and not Muslims in general. And Minister Malcolm has been suspended from public speaking for the time being.
I've been silent for the past 90 days because of some statements I made concerning the President of the United States.
which were distorted.
They were distorted.
And yes.
What did you say, Malcolm?
Well, I said the same thing that everybody says, that his assassination was the result of the climate of hate.
But
only I said the chickens came home to roost, and which means the same thing.
You did not say that you were glad the president was killed.
No, that's what the press said. What would I look like saying that I'm glad the president was killed?
The relationship between Malcolm and the Nation of Islam became dramatically strained. Malcolm was silenced. He had become too big, too fast, and so popular that his image overshadowed that of Elijah Muhammad himself. The internal jealousy would become the beginning of the end of his time in the Nation of Islam.
During the 90 days that I've been silent, I have come to the conclusion that I can best help spread the solution and the diagnosis that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gives of the so-called Negro problem in this country by continuing to remain out of the Nation of Islam and working on my own without restriction.
Malcolm split from the Nation of Islam and took many Muslim followers with him. But it wouldn't be quite that simple. He began to be disrespectful to the teachings of Elijah Muhammad and to the man himself. There were consequences for this. Threats began to surface.
Why are they threatening your life?
Well, primarily because they're afraid that I will tell the real reason that I'm out of the black Muslim movement, which I never told. I kept to myself. But the real reason is that Elijah Muhammad, the head of the movement, is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls. 6 different teenage girls who were his private personal secretary.
Too defiant to yield, Malcolm had a target on his back. The internal, strictly disciplined Muslim security force called the Fruit of Islam were looking to inflict justice. With his days numbered, Malcolm was understandably agitated.
I wanted you to know that my house was bombed. It was bombed by the black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. Now they had planned to do it from the front and the back so that I couldn't get out. They covered the front completely, the front door. Then they had come to the back, but instead of getting directly in the back of the house and throwing it this way, they stood at a 45-degree angle and tossed it at the window so it glanced and went onto the ground.
I don't know if I woke my husband up or he woke me up, but I remember him pushing me out of the bedroom door, and I looked to my right, and I saw all of the fire.
The fire hit the window, and it woke up my second oldest baby. But the fire burned on the outside of the house. But had that one gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody in sight.
Are you not perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh yes, I probably am a dead man already.
Abdullah Abdur Razak, then known as James 67X, was a former member of the Fruit of Islam who stayed with Malcolm when he left the nation. And he says the atmosphere was extremely tense and extremely dangerous.
There was a brother named Reuben Francis who was given this assignment, paid $65 a week to guard Brother Malcolm's life, because we knew now the noose was drawing tighter. Brother Malcolm stayed at a hotel. The only person who knew what hotel he was at were either the security forces and Brother Reuben. I didn't even know, and I was his man Friday. His house having been firebombed, he was no longer living in the house. We moved him out, and he moved into Ruby Dee's brother, Thomas 13X Wallace. He moved his family into that home.